Star Wars is going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary pretty soon. That's a huge accomplishment for any movie, TV series, or toy line. Because it's been around for so long, it's pretty easy to forget that Star Wars was just as much of a collaborative process as any other movie. Really, it's its age and fandom that makes it feel so set in stone. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi were all subject to new and changing ideas during both development and filming. The concept art and illustrations of Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston are legendary within the Star Wars fan community. They're beautiful pieces of art that give us a peek into the early concepts and ideas within the Star Wars universe. Some of these images are very recognizable and very clearly translated from art to film. However, some of these images are very unfamiliar and more alien than the final product that we see. All of this art is highly evocative and extremely gorgeous. It can't be understated how influential the art of Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston was to science fiction and fantasy. Back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, Hasbro knew Star Wars was still a goldmine for action figures and toy concepts. Leaving no stone unturned, they started to tap into the vein of concept art action figures. Released in 2009, this is Hasbro Star Wars Legacy Collection Concept Art IG-88. And it is honestly one of my favorite Star Wars figures that I have in my collection. This is a very sleek, stylish, and elegant action figure, which are not words you would typically associate with IG-88. This design is composed of a lot of rounded, simplistic shapes, and it gives him a very chic and futuristic style that contrasts with the other robots of the Star Wars universe. The concept art IG-88 is very derivative of a lot of 40s, 50s, and 60s robot designs, whether that be Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still, the YM-3 robot from Lost in Space, or even Satan's robot. And this does keep consistent with a lot of the influences and inspirations for Star Wars, like Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and Commando Cody. With all of these influences combined, it gives IG-88 the feeling of a mid-century space-age robot, and that's in contrast to the Art Deco and German Expressionist-inspired C-3PO. The engineering on this figure is pretty excellent, all things considered. Despite being a very stiff robot design that we never see in motion, it has a great range of articulation and expressive movement. The only real criticism I can levy against it is the fact that it doesn't have proper hip joints, just regular swivels like a 5POA action figure. This, in conjunction with the lack of ankle tilts, actually make it a little difficult to pose in some action scenes. Not because of its inability to pose, but its inability to keep stable. It has a very top-heavy design with wide shoulders and very thin, very narrow legs with essentially high heels at the bottom. This kind of does beg the question, though, of why the concept art from IG-88 is so drastically different to what we see in The Empire Strikes Back. The most likely answer is budgetary reasons. IG-88 went through a few different designs during the creation process, the foremost design being the mid-century robot the figure is based on. There's also another design that would go on to be used for EV in Jabba's palace, and then this design, which would later inspire the HK droids we see in The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. We also know that fellow bounty hunter Boba Fett went through a few different designs in his development process, originally starting as an Imperial Super Trooper and working his way down to the bounty hunter we all know and love. Even though there was a lot of love, affection, and budget put into the practical effects, miniatures, and props used in The Empire Strikes Back, I think that the bounty hunter lineup was a little bit on the back burner, especially when you consider that Bossk, Dengar, and IG-88's final models were all made from reconstituted costume parts and props. For example, Bossk reuses the flight suit Bo Shek wears in the cantina, and then Dengar reuses the snowtrooper armor. A fairly well-known fun fact among Star Wars fans is the fact that IG-88's head is seen in the Mos Eisley Cantina. These big old percolators in the back of the cantina were actually made of Rolls-Royce jet engine parts, and those parts were reused for IG-88. This is partially what gives him such a cold and industrial look. It also kind of makes him look like Nomad from Star Trek the original series, which was also based off a jet engine. And this is the second time I've brought up Star Trek in a Star Wars video, so that means I gotta wrap this up. I think that this figure shows that the Hasbro Star Wars team at this time had a lot of love, faith, and dedication to the fans. Not only the dedication to making them buy cool new toys, but also to give them interesting concepts. Toys we had never seen before and probably won't see again.